Bases dropped. It's a Thursday. It's Soccer Down here, June 20th. All kinds of things to get into on a Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. We have an opus to discuss about MLS structure and expansion and playoffs and such. We'll get into that this morning. We've got a lot to talk about when it comes to our referee friends and video assistant referees, specifically related to the FIFA Women's World Cup and yesterday's action. We'll get into that in just a second. We have U.S. Open Cup as well with 2 cup sets last night. Both USL Championship teams advanced to the quarterfinals. New Mexico over Dallas and St. Louis over Cincinnati on a late goal, and St. Louis will be headed to Atlanta to face Atlanta United on July 10th. But John wanted to talk about Scotland first, and not about haggis, I'm assuming. I'm assuming it's about how Scotland
No. I never eat that stuff anyway.
Blew a 3-0 lead and was eliminated from the World Cup yesterday.
All I'm going to say is, and I know that people are going to, come at me with their hair on fire, or at least some folks.
OSG Nelson.
Yeah, we're at Soccer Down here. I can look at both accounts.
No, at OSG Nelson. Don't throw me into this. If you want to go at John, go at John.
Yeah, well, and there's also the Thursday Thoughts about Anderlecht and their mauve-colored mayonnaise that's coming out now.
Okay.
Last time I checked, and this is just me going off the top of my head, if a keeper, and once again, I'm sure that Jess is listening, and she will probably say something. But the way that the rule is currently structured, if a keeper comes off the line, you got to call it. And it got called. It was a re-kick. It ends up 3-3. Scotland blows a lead. I know they blew a lead. But by the letter of the law, and I know that we probably have to address the law later, and I know that Jess has taken over cup dates talking about this kind of stuff. As the law is currently structured, foot comes off the line, keeper comes off, yellow card, retake. Jason and I have said that we can guarantee at this point that you're going to have a keeper get a second yellow some point in this tournament in a shootout because of this. But the last time I checked, keeper comes off the line, you got to call it. So by the letter of the law, that's what I saw yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that part's true. And the issue in that match is the referee, and the referees in this tournament have been very demonstrative in having these discussions with goalkeepers about staying on the line. Is it harsh? Yeah, it is. And I don't think anybody's arguing that. The issue is not even what happened yesterday as much as anything. Look, the issue is goalkeepers have come off their line for years on penalties.
Yep.
The rule was always there, and it was actually you had to keep both feet on the line. It wasn't until a few years ago, I believe, that they could even move side to side, which was ridiculous. But you had to keep both feet on the line when the ball was kicked. It was wink, wink, nudge, nudge, yeah, whatever, and referees called it as they saw fit. And you would see very rarely a goalkeeper called for it. I remember a 2012 MLS playoff match between DC United and the Red Bulls where a penalty by, it was Kenny Cooper, I believe, who takes a penalty, scores, but it actually encroachment was called on this one, which is even more rarely called. Thierry Henry was like almost hugging Kenny Cooper as he struck the ball. And encroachment was called, and they had to retake it. Then, of course, it's saved when it's retaken. You had encroachment. You had staying on the line. All those things have been in the rules since I know anything about the rules. They just weren't called on a regular basis. Now with VAR and with the change that you have to have 1 foot on the line, not 2, they're saying they're going to call it. They called it in the U20s. They're calling it in the Women's World Cup. But here's where it gets stupid. And it's just stupid. And it's something that IFAB needs to sit down and look at and maybe make a change now. The Premier League, which is adding VAR, they have come out to say now, and I think it was maybe after yesterday's match, that they will not have goalkeepers' movements before penalties seen by VAR. That will be left to the on-field officials. That's a big change, and this is the Professional Games Match Officials Limited, the organization which trains and supplies referees to England's top 4 divisions and the FA. They're going to review the position during the course of the season, but it's understood they want to avoid the confusion and delays witnessed in France this week. To me, there's no confusion. I mean, it's you're on the line or you're off. But everybody's yelling at VAR on this. It's not a VAR issue. It's a laws of the game issue. Because it is a simple yes or no decision that VAR is involved in. The problem is it's actually being enforced now. And it wasn't before. My honest feeling is I think it wasn't enforced before because the law was too harsh. I think it's still harsh, but where do you set the line? Because if you say, well, 2 feet on the line when the penalty struck, it's unfair because goalkeepers, there's no way they can make those saves unless it's a horrible penalty. We need to give them some leeway. Okay? You change the law to where it's 1 foot on the line, but now you're going to call it. And now I think the gut feeling around the game is it's too harsh. I mean, Chris Sutton, former goalkeeper, says, I'm a fan of VAR, but that's a ridiculous decision once again against Scotland. All penalties would be retaken if goalkeepers are getting called for that. It's against the laws of the game. It's always been against the laws of the game. It wasn't called. Now, the laws of the game have been adjusted. It's getting called. VAR is a big reason why it's getting called. But it's just the laws of the game issue. All penalties would be retaken if goalkeepers are getting called for that. Actually, no, there are quite a few saves. Last night, Armani from Argentina, foot on the line, makes the save. It didn't come back. But where do you set the bar if it's too harsh as it is now? How do you write it? Because I have a big problem with a rule that is in the laws of the game and gets called once a season. Once a season, you're going to call a goalkeeper coming off their line. Once a season, you're going to call encroachment. When's that going to pop up? And it pops up in a playoff game in MLS in 2012, and it has a big hand in the Red Bulls getting knocked out. That's fair? No. So how do you write the law to actually reflect the way people want it to be? That's the question I have. I mean, do you just say a reasonable attempt must be made to stay on the line before the kick is taken? That's the only thing I can come up with, because the law was being broken consistently and called incredibly inconsistently. Now it's been changed, and VAR is going to exploit a bad law. But when you have the Premier League come out and say, we will not have our video assistant referees look at this, even though it is in the protocols from IFAB, something's got to be done. And I don't know who's right, who's wrong here. I want to know how the rules should be written. And that's what I'd like to hear from people who are listening. And we've been talking about this all summer, which is a shame because there's been a lot of great soccer played. How would you write the rule? Are you happy with the way it's being done now? Do you feel like it will self-correct? I do feel like it will self-correct. I think goalkeepers will adjust. I don't know how long that's going to take. But if you're not happy with it, rewrite the law. How would you write that law on penalties, what goalkeepers can and cannot do, to where it is consistently enforced? That's what I want to know, because we all have seen the videos of Brian Escurry in a World Cup final for the United States against China in 1999, way off her line. way off her line. And as a goalkeeper, you've got to test the referee and make them call that back. Referee didn't have the guts to make that call. So you take advantage. That's what you're supposed to do as a player. But how do we avoid those situations? I don't know. I don't know how the law should be written at this point with the conversation around it. I really don't. And I'd love to hear what people want to suggest there, because you need something that everybody knows the boundaries, and nobody knew the boundaries before. Nobody truly knew the boundaries before. So now that VAR's involved, boundaries are rigid. It's not the old days of the referee can do what they want with it and bend everything. There's still things the referee can bend to manage a match, but this isn't one of them. So how do we write the law to where you get rid of that? I don't know. Suggestions?
Yeah, I would put it out there. I mean, you saw Lee Alexander actually take 2 steps into the goal,
which is not supposed to be allowed either.
Yeah, and tried to do that as a way to. That's
not supposed to be allowed, because that's a way to try to still take a step up. That is supposed to be against the laws of the game as well, and that's what's hard about it is we don't know if she was cited for that or coming off the line or both. But you're not supposed to be able to start from in the goal and take a step up.
Well, no, this was on the second attempt. She went backwards.
I know.
And takes that step or two back to, I guess, to almost reset herself to where she ends up on the line at the time of the kick.
And that's supposed to be against the laws of the game. But I mean, you're not going to retake a made penalty. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because I mean, looking at that interpretation, you're moving forward. Still, you're moving forward, regardless of where you're starting.
But that's another one of these things that there's some things about these modifications to the laws of the game for this year that have been, I think, a little confused. A big one is on the new handball decisions and definitions. And you have a lot of announcers talking about it in game or in studio that defenders have to play with their arms behind their back now. No, that's the law is actually written to avoid that. Arms by the side is okay, and that's what's been said by IFAB and when they talk about this. Arms by the side is what they want. They want that to be okay. They don't want defenders to have to feel like they have to have their arms behind the back. But as Jess said on our World Cup date yesterday, defenders who put their arms behind their back, part of it could be because they don't want that movement, even if they have their arms by their side. They want to make that movement away from their silhouette even more difficult. So that's the tricky part, is that, okay, yes, you don't have to put your arms behind your back to avoid the ball striking your hand. If your arms are down by your side and it strikes your hand, it's not supposed to be called. But if you're running and you're moving, your arms are going to move with your body, and they're going to move away from your sides. So there you go. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but the Premier League coming out and saying that they will not have VARs dealing with goalkeepers' movement before penalties. This is an issue. And that is basically telling IFAB, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. VAR should not be doing this. We're not going to do it. Now, what's interesting is will the Bundesliga follow suit? Will Serie A follow suit? MLS will not incorporate these changes to the laws of the game until next season, and that's a very important thing. Handballs are decided on the previous laws of the game definition. Gwen gets fired up about handballs. The previous definitions are what referees are using the rest of this season. Same thing with this. I want to see what MLS and Pro says about goalkeepers' movement before penalties. Because technically, in shootout situations, this season, in the playoffs, both feet should be on the line. And VAR should not be looking at it. Next season, how's it going to be? I don't know. And with the Premier League coming out and saying this, that is a really big deal. That is a massive deal, basically telling IFAB, you guys got it wrong.
Kafka has a radical idea.
Uh-oh. Now I'm scared.
Add something similar to the hockey goalie blue paint space, maybe a quarter of the size of how it's represented in hockey, but goalies can't leave that space until the kick is taken.
I don't think you're going to actually add the marking on the field, but the idea behind it would be the solution, and then it would be down to referee's discretion. It'd be essentially like a fair catch halo situation in American football, where you don't see it, but you know it's there. It would be it would be what, yeah. I mean, it would be whatever distance you set off the line. A goalkeeper cannot leave that distance, that circumference, whatever you want to call it, that arc. But you're not going to actually draw it. I don't think IFAB would approve anything like that at all, because they're very persnickety about field markings. So I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be down to referees' discretion, but essentially that idea, yes, I would agree with that. I think that's the way you give leeway, but you give the referee the discretion to do it, and then you'd have to take VAR out of it because it's a judgment call by the referee that VAR should not be involved in. You shouldn't be slow-mowing that to look at. It goes a step further into where VAR should be involved and where it shouldn't. And after a break, we'll talk about how replay gets used in other sports, because I think there's things to learn from here for IFAB and for soccer. But in cases of yes or no, clear-cut, it is or it isn't, VAR is a very good tool. Did a foul happen inside the 18 or not? Did the ball cross the goal line or not? Did the goalkeeper move off the line or not? According to the rule, yep, that's a yes or no. Was the wrong player given a card? Stuff like that. Judgment calls, and especially where judgment calls are then slow-mode, where you're changing the context. And we talked about this with handballs this summer, red card situations, tackles. Other than if you want to see if the defender went studs up or not, and you slow-mo it to see did they show their studs. I can understand that one. But in general, I don't like the slow-mo on a judgment call because it changes the context of what the referee saw. And that's not where we should be with this. But on a yes or no, was it offside or not? Slow-mo it. Slow-mo it all day. Isolate it. Draw lines. Get the call right. And that's what I want to see with VAR, is get those calls right. Get the yes or no calls right. Use every bit of technology you have. But in cases of judgment, supplement the referee's view with other views, but don't change the context of what the referee saw by slow-mowing and tricks like that, because that changes their judgment, and I'm not a fan of that. It's a process. It's been a process any sport that replay has been incorporated in. It's almost impossible to just drop a dramatic rule change in like this and get it right day one. Tweaks need to be made, and tweaks need to be made consistently. IFAB's going to be earning their keep with making these tweaks year after year, and maybe even half year after half year, because this is a huge change to the way the game is played, and they have to get it right. And the Premier League coming out today and saying this, that set off alarm bells when I saw that come through. And 442 posted the article this morning. I retweeted it a little while ago. That is, I think, the biggest thing we've seen so far from a league or a competition that is incorporating VAR to say, yes, but this part's not right. And hopefully that leads to the correct changes. But VAR is not going away, I think, is the number one thing here. It is a good tool when it is used correctly, and people get the calls right with using that tool. But it can be overused. It's a tricky situation. IFAB's got to get this right, because people are fired up about these situations. And in so many cases, I think they're fired up for the wrong reason.
AA 5 stripes as we go to break.
Mm-hmm.
Add to the rule, if the penalty's missed, not blocked, the keeper's off the line won't be retaken. Just how it won't be retaken if the shot goes into the goal.
I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. If they're off the line, but it is wide of the goal, don't retake it because it did not affect it. Unless, and you'd probably have to have this in there, unless the keeper off the line is egregious to where it caused the distraction. And that's very rare, and that's probably not going to happen because the goalkeeper's not going to be that silly. Could it happen? Yes. So have it in the laws because that's when you write laws of the game, when you write rules, you have to consider everything. So I would only include that option. If the goalkeeper jumps out to the top of the 6 before the kick is taken to distract the kicker, then yes, it gets retaken. And then that's an automatic yellow card. Not any other time they just step off the line because they mistimed it. Oh, man. We'll talk about soccer eventually, I promise. One day. We'll get all this right. We're going to try to help IFAB this morning and try to help the different rules makers in the game and try to define things a little bit more from what we see. We're going to take a break, come back, talk about replay. And I wanted to get specifically into the NFL because I went back to look at the replay history in the National Football League, and there were things I forgot about. I forgot that it was added and then taken away for 7 years and then brought back in the current format that we have now. Once I read it, I remembered it, but I forgot that completely. I just thought, wow, we've had replay for a long time. Not so much. We'll get into that, and we'll get into maybe some lessons that IFAB and international soccer can learn from. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Thursday thoughts. Thursdays can get a little sideways at times, and it already has after the Argentina-Scotland Women's World Cup match yesterday. And before we keep going down this road, because I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle, that comeback from Argentina yesterday.
Oh,
if you
ridiculous.
love the game at all, that has to get you a little bit, because Argentina in World Cup history on the women's side had scored 2 goals in 8 matches coming into that. And they came back, the first team ever in Women's World Cup history to be down 3-0 to come back and get a result. Unbelievable. And we've talked about their situation, their history. I mean, it's basically semi-pro. After a lot of pressure, the Argentine FA allowed for stipends for their national team players to basically pay them like third or fourth division men. It's better than zero, which is what it was before, and now you've had clubs start to go professional. It's a step. But that performance and what they did in this tournament as a whole, because they're probably going home unless really crazy things happen today, that performance specifically, that comeback in 15 minutes could completely change women's soccer in Argentina and maybe even all of South America because of how it inspired people. I think it changes a ton of things. I was sitting in a parking lot watching the end of it.
Yes,
it was 3-0.
you were.
It was 3-0, and I'm like, oh, man, all right, well, my team's out. My second team, anyway. And then it gets to 3-1. I'm like, okay. I'm following Twitter, refreshing frequently as I'm running around doing stuff during the day. And then I see it gets 3-2. I'm like, all right, Fox Sports app, boom, sitting there, screaming first that it was a penalty, and the ref just completely blew the call. And it took forever, about 5 minutes,
Yes.
for them to get the call right. Completely blew the call. To me, it was an easy call. I'm a little biased as well. Sorry, Scottish fans. But then the PK. Then you see that it's going to be retaken. During the penalty as well, the gamesmanship / whatever you want to call it. And
Wolfing.
all kinds of, it's way beyond that. I thought it was strategic in the fact that you had people distracting the referee so another player could get up in the Argentine player's face. That was pretty bad. It was way over the top to me. And, well, karma's a thing. Because then it comes back, and then the kick is retaken. Then it's good. And then they completely blew extra time or stoppage time because just from the penalty situation, 6 minutes of gameplay were lost. When the goal goes in on the international feed, because all the graphics are coming from the international feed, they showed 4 minutes of stoppage time. And They were kicking off at just after that.
Yeah.
Only added like a minute.
94:43, I think.
Yeah. 6 minutes. That got to 95. It got over 95. It was about a minute after the 4 minutes that they had said before all of this was done. The penalty situation took 6 minutes. There were 4 substitutions in the second half. There were 4 goals scored, and there were, I think, 2 cards shown. I mean, it should have been 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There should have been another 5-6 minutes after the penalty, and I think there could have been a winner either way. Either team could have got a goal for a winner, and now both teams are likely going to be eliminated. I didn't want that to get lost in the shuffle because that was an incredibly special moment to watch in the game. But what we're talking about is VAR and that part of it. It doesn't bail out Scotland, in my opinion, at all. VAR being involved in this doesn't make Scotland, oh, well, yeah, they should have gone through because of blah, blah. No, they blew a 3-0 lead, like flat out. They blew it. And you've seen in this tournament multiple times goalkeepers penalized for coming off the line. You knew that that's how it was going to be looked at. You knew the replays were going to be looking at it. So when you do it, at this point, you should know. And at this point, you have to sacrifice that and do the best you can to cover as much of the goal as you can without breaking that law, the laws of the game. Law 14. So there you go. But let's get into replays and the history of it. I looked back at the NFL, and I haven't gotten as deep into the NBA, and there's some overlap and some interesting things on the NBA side as well. But they have a mix of yes-no decisions and judgment calls on both. I think the NBA's judgment calls are more along the lines of, from a soccer perspective, red cards. Is it a flagrant foul? You know, judging after a foul is called what it is, that type of situation. But it's also all done from a centralized location. And the replay official makes the call. The referees on the court don't once it goes to replay. The NFL went to that in 2017 where final decisions on all replay reviews will now come from designated senior members of the officiating department at the command center, and referees will now view all replay video on wired handheld tablets. All right. When the NFL added replay the first time around, which was voted out about 6 years later, it was plays of possession, fumbles, receptions, and muffs, which is lots of judgment calls, but then also sidelines, goal lines, end lines, line of scrimmage, more than 11 players on the field, yes-no stuff. That got voted out. Going into 99 is when they added the, not unique, because I believe cricket has this as well, and rugby might too, the coach's challenge. And I've seen people suggest that the way to fix the VAR situations are to allow coaches to challenge situations as opposed to VAR triggering a review. I don't know if that changes anything.
No, and I mean, for me, you're looking up you're looking at the idea of yes, no versus why or why not, or how. And I think for VAR, looking at the yes, no, you're cool. But then you're looking into why and why not and trying to figure things out. And then for me, that's when it gets all sideways, when you're trying to insert ideas into that kind of a thing.
No, it's not even that. To me, it's I don't think if you allow the coaches to challenge it as opposed to VAR triggering, I don't think the coaches are going to be virtuous and say, oh, no, I don't think there's an issue here. Let's not challenge that. I think, honestly, what that would do is it would open up even more situations to where, no, that was a penalty. That needs to be reviewed. Because, according to VAR protocols, penalty situations, penalty calls, potential penalty calls, get reviewed. Or if you're a team that just gave up a goal, you're challenging to say, no, there was a foul in the build-up. There was a foul in the build-up. This happened. Review it. There would be more reviews. Even with limited, there would be more reviews than there are currently happening now. So I'm not in that camp that let managers initiate reviews. I think it gets worse, not better.
Even if you only have the one red flag in, say, the NFL?
If you only have one, but you won't do that. Because here's what will happen. It'll be the same thing that happened in the NFL. You will do that, and then coaches will be out of challenges, and then in the final 30 seconds, something egregious will happen, and then everybody will say, well, that's not okay. We can't have that deciding the game. And then you get to the situation that the NFL has. All reviews are initiated by a replay assistant in the final 2 minutes. You don't throw the flags then. So then that was just what would happen, and then it'd be the final 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever soccer decides on. Then it's back to the video assistant referee initiating the review. So no,
and players going down for quote unquote injuries in that time frame where they have to force a play to look at it and things like that.
Yeah, and these are
because
things,
we've seen that.
Yeah, and when was the last time you saw that?
Well, where players are down.
When was the last time you saw that?
It was last season.
That's what I'm saying, though, and that's what I want people to understand. This is the first time we've seen VAR in the Women's World Cup, alongside some major changes to the laws of the game. That's a big reason why we're seeing what we're seeing this summer. Still need to learn from it. Still need to correct it. And the Premier League IFAB discussion is going to be a fascinating one. But that's why we're seeing it. Go back to the first full year of VAR in Major League Soccer. You saw that a lot. You saw VAR maybe get involved too much. Maybe overstep their bounds a little bit. I feel like those boundaries have been set now to where you're not seeing that as much.
How long did that take?
About a year. Bundesliga, you don't have that as much. Other leagues, I think Copa America right now is dealing with this because it feels like they're overstepping a little bit too involved. For me, it's somewhat simple on VAR. Limit slow-mo to yes/no decisions and get those right. Those are just simple. The replay officials get it right. And honestly, to me, those are the ones that the replay official says, yes, it's offside. No, it's not offside. Yes, the foul was in the 18. No, it wasn't. And there's no need for the referee to go look at the video. Now, that's a big change in referees' control of a match, but that speeds it up, and it gets the call right. And getting the call right is what we should want anyway. I'm not with the people who are basically the argument against VAR is, well, referees get calls wrong, so let's just eliminate this. No, we want to get the calls right. That's the whole point here. So get the calls right and speed up the process. If it's a yes/no decision, the video assistant referee is empowered to tell the referee yes or no. Done. Judgment calls, the video replay official, the video assistant referee, and the assistant VAR get the different angles together, and if the referee wants to take a look, and yes, I'm fine with the VAR saying, hey, we have some different angles you might want to look at. Then the referee makes the decision, and if they want to go look at it, they look at it. That's the way I would do it. And don't use slow-mo in that. It's different angles to show. Because slow-mo changes the context of it to me.
Yes. That to me is the... Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the handball, for example, the England-Scotland handball earlier in the tournament, to me, replay changed how that looked completely. I thought the player was just moving naturally, and there was no way they could avoid that handball. So, slow-mo on yes-nos, no slow-mo on judgment calls, yes-no decisions, the VAR makes the call, and they relay that, and it's done. Others, if the referee decides, and this is where referees are going to have to make these decisions, if they decide, okay, I hear that there might be something I didn't see, I'm going to go take a look, then your VAR and your AVARs are pulling those replays up and say, here's the angle from behind the goal, here's the angle from the other side, here's the angle that you couldn't see from your field of vision. Done. That's it. I think everything speeds up, and I think it's much more clear on when VAR is getting involved. And those are the things that I think we need, because when it's a situation like a catch in football, and nobody knows what it is.
Yeah.
You replay it from every different angle and every different slow-mo, and 5 different referees are going to tell you 5 different things. That's the worst situation. I don't think the laws of the game have too many of those situations. Are there different interpretations of fouls? Sure. And that's part of the beauty of the game. That's just going to be there. But I think it's a little more clear-cut, so I think replay can be more efficient and solve these things, but it just needs to continually be tweaked and updated and defined. Because right now, it's not what anybody wants it to be.
And don't even get into the notion of catch, fumble, football move, and replay and all that kind of stuff. Because those laws have sent
because there's no definition.
Replay sideways. Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff's just... Luckily, I don't think, probably outside of the handball, that there is a situation like that in soccer's laws of the game. The handball is the toughest one. And I think it always will be. Other than that, let's make this efficient. Let's get these things done quicker. I mean, in Copa America, for example, I was reading a tweet thread out of South America, and they don't have the same equipment. They don't have the same technological equipment. So things are slower, so it's taking longer. Nobody wants this stuff. You have to have everything you need to do it. You have to set the clear guidelines for how it's being done. and then go. And then you do have to rely on managers and players to adjust to it because it is different. The flag going up, this is something that I can tell you from my time over in the game. I was never taught as a young player, if you're a defender, put your arm up when you think there might be an offside. That's a fairly more recent development that you'd see defenders all do that. I was always told, play to the whistle. Flag doesn't change anything. Play to the whistle. That's changed over time. It's still the rule. The flag doesn't mean anything. The flag is a signal to the referee that the AR thinks that a player is offside. Doesn't always mean that the whistle is going to follow. And that's something that I think is really key here. But now, if the directive, because of the involvement of replay, is to keep the flag down, to not distract the players, play to the conclusion of the play, and then if you need to replay or if the VAR needs to get involved, then they do. That's a change in the way the game kind of flows, and that's something players and managers are going to have to adjust to. Honestly, it's not a change, but it is a change. It's not a change because the flag never did anything anyway except signal that a whistle could be blown here because the AR thinks that there's an offside. Doesn't mean the center referee is going to blow the whistle. I've seen that happen plenty of times.
Katie Weaver, and first and foremost, Katie, I hope you go and plug your phone in because it was at 20% when she sent this message.
Oh, get the charger going.
Yeah. If I recall the first and most successful implementation of review tech in sports, it has been shot spot in tennis. It's been an important protection for line judges and clearly shows in or out. And then that reminded me of Cyclops when it came to fault, not fault. The same technology is not used for foot faults on serves. Sunday league rules are that you call your own foot faults, parenthesis. I've never seen this happen, close parenthesis. Yeah. But I have been called out by an opponent for it. And angry emoji. Some players stand a foot behind the line because they know their motion will take them close to the line. This should not be illegal. In the pro game, foot fault is not super common, but is called by line judges. Remember Serena in 2009, angrier emoji.
Yes.
Takeaway.
The angriest emoji.
Angriest emoji. Takeaway, use tech for foot faults in tennis and goal line on PKs. Don't penalize a player for backing up to help their timing or movement. And I believe it was Tofka who wants him to use the foam. One step in front of the keeper. Ref draws it before the kick proceed as normal. IFAB can't complain.
That's not a bad idea that they do use the foam on it. That's not a bad idea. That could potentially be done. It adds some time. And for flow of the game, it's not ideal. It adds some time that, and I'd have to probably figure out how you would do that. Would you do a straight line across in front of the goal, all the way from post to post? Would you do, because the keeper can move side to side, so I think you'd have to do that. And you'd probably do it as a basic adjustment of, or thought of, each goalkeeper's stride, because you have
3 feet each way,
6'6". Well, no, not each way. You can go side to side all day. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't just do it as an arc because of where the goalkeeper's standing, because they can move side to side on the line. Then your arc changes, so you can't do that. Do you just draw a line, whatever their stride would be outside of the goal? Do you draw a line to that? Is it 3 yards? Is it halfway outside the 6? Whatever. With the foam, you could. I mean, that would be a way to symbolize it, and that would make it much clearer on, here's the boundary. If you end up outside of this before the kick is taken, whistle's being blown, don't complain. It's not a bad idea. I'd like to see it in practice. That'd be one I'd like to see tested out somewhere.
Let's see. Tony Jabroni thinks PK should be the referee's decision and not reviewable by VAR. The ref's judgment should be used in this. # Thursday Thoughts.
Let me see how Tony said that, because I thought, well, PKs, I'm assuming Tony's talking about the actual kick. Yeah, not like penalty decisions. It was, and that's the thing, and this is my issue with it, is up until VAR was involved, it was the referee's decision on when a goalkeeper stepped off their line and when they didn't. It was never called correctly. Like, hardly ever called correctly. So you're a goalkeeper, and you know, well, referee's going to allow me some leeway here. But I don't know how much. And then when it gets called, it's an absolutely 100% correct call if on the critical penalty save for the U.S. in the Women's World Cup final 1999, if the referee calls that back and says Scurry's off her line, it's the correct call. You can't complain. But it was never called correctly. That's the issue. So can you tell everybody? Well, those old days of giving you leeway and calling it this way, even though it wasn't in the laws of the game, well, yeah, those are gone, and we're going to call it tight now. Would that actually work? Would it be consistent? I don't think so. So I hear what Tony's saying completely, because I don't think we love this situation that's happening right now. I don't think anybody does. I get it, and VAR is just doing their job in it. But I don't think anybody loves how rigid it is on goalkeepers at the moment. Is that a temporary thing because we're actually enforcing a rule that should have been enforced before? Is it, this is not the way we want the game to be played? I don't know yet. I don't know if we're going to know immediately because it's a huge change to the way the game's played. I think you need laws that are clearly defined, and I think referees have to follow the laws of the game, period. The fact that they haven't on penalties for so long has created this confusion. And now you're trying to correct it, but are you correcting it in the right way? And that's where I'm at with it. It sounds like most people, even with the change from not 2 feet on the line to 1 foot, which was never called when it's 2 feet anyway, but even with that change, people aren't happy with the way goalkeepers are treated on penalty kicks. Okay, then what would the change be, is my question. It can't be just go back to the way it was where referees didn't call what was in the laws of the game, because that creates too much confusion for me. If that was the standard, if the way it was called before was the standard, codify it. Give it a definition. Give it words to back it up. So then we know what the standard is, because nobody ever did before. And now that there is a defined standard, it's causing issues. And I don't know if it's just a temporary thing that will be fine here in a year or so, or in a couple tournaments, or if it's just the wrong way to do the whole penalty kick situation to begin with.
Trying to see who else is on the board. Okay. Tafka again says he sees a lot of give and take. If you make penalties harder to score, giving goalies more leeway in the movement prior to the kick, then it balances out over the calling of handballs with the okay emoji.
Ooh, I don't know if they thought about all of that together. I'd say probably not on that. And there's been a lot of talk about, well, penalties are so hard for goalkeepers to save right now, we should make it better for them. Should we? I mean, penalties are supposed to be harsh. They're not supposed to be easy. So do we want to go in that direction? Penalties have been missed more in the last decade than they were before that. Now, why that is, I don't know. Is it bad technique? Is it more pressure? Is it better goalkeeping? Is it more leeway referees were giving goalkeepers on coming off their line? Don't know. But those success rates were dropping. Is that why they made this change? Don't know. Maybe. But a penalty should be not an automatic goal, but it should be a strong possibility of a goal. I mean, that's the whole point. It's a severe punishment.
Is going to a For the Win article from USA Today, and it was a road that I didn't necessarily want to go down. It was going to take entirely too much time. trying to see if there's anybody else. Okay. Chandler Creel. In regards to goalkeepers stepping off the line early, the obvious solution is to install a horse racing style gate that opens immediately once the ball is kicked.
Yeah, there's like an electric fence or something.
Yeah, like the invisible fence for dogs.
Yeah, you get buzzed if you step off too early. That's what we need.
Yes.
Let's put a collar on before the kick.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know. It's not what we want it to be right now. I mean, I wanted to talk about how amazing that game was and how amazing that comeback was and everything it means, and instead we're talking about, well, Scotland, it was unfair. It wasn't unfair. VAR did what it's supposed to do, and that was the whole point of my tweet yesterday, that so many of the issues that we're having right now are not exactly VAR. It's the laws of the game and the way that they're implemented and how people feel about them. This whole thing about the penalties and goalkeepers coming off the line, VAR is doing its job in this. The issue is the law, and the issue is the way we want the law to work. The law was one way, but it wasn't actually called that way. Now the law has changed, and on paper it's given goalkeepers more leeway, but now it's actually being called, so it is giving them far less leeway. What do we actually want on this? And that's something that I think should come into play with IFAB. And what is the general consensus on how we want these situations to play out? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know if we're going to know at the end of this tournament. But in my opinion, the Premier League coming out and saying we will not have video assistant referees get involved on penalty kicks and goalkeepers coming off their line, that's a warning shot to IFAB that, hey, something's not right here. You guys need to fix this. And let's see how it gets handled, because it should not be the story of the tournament. It is one of the major stories of the Women's World Cup right now. And I'll be curious to see the overall effect of video assistant referees on Copa America this summer. I think right now it's not good. And it's so much slower there. That's the bigger issue I have with it, is it's just so slow to get things done.
But yeah, I would recommend. Did you retweet that thread yesterday?
No, you can retweet mine. Retweet it from Soccer Down Here. Just retweet my my whispering thread.
Yeah, right. So I would recommend anybody who wants the background on CONMEBOL to read that thread as to differences.
Oh, no, that's a different one. Yeah, retweet that from me, because I tweeted that. It's in Spanish, but you can Google translate it and then understand what's going on here. It's an equipment issue in Copa America. They don't have the same equipment, and it's slow. That's a huge problem.
So I will track that down and retweet it. But no, I got stuck in an Andrew Joseph article from For the Win about VAR, and I think he's missing the point, and that was what I got wrapped up in just a little bit ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to miss the point right now because people are frustrated, and I'm 100% understanding it. There was an article in Deadspin that one line from it that was thrown my way was, the VAR system did its job, at least if you understand that job as, quote, making sure the calls on the pitch were unimpeachably correct when replayed in slow-mo. And then they say, but at the risk of repeating myself, this isn't how soccer is supposed to be played. Yes, no decisions in slow-mo should be unimpeachably correct. Offside? There's no reason to miss an offside call anymore. Shouldn't happen. There's no reason to miss if a foul happened inside the box or outside the box. There's things like that, yes, they should be unimpeachably correct, and use slow-mo to get them. 100% great. Love it. Judgment calls, which are a whole separate issue, should not be played in slow-mo, because I agree, it does change the way soccer is supposed to be played. It changes the way referees see the situation that they called. It changes their judgment in midstream, and that should not happen. And there's a very important distinction, and that's what I've been trying to get across, at least the way I see it, is that there's two categories of VAR. Yes, no's, and judgment calls. Yes, no's are easy for VAR. And I think, for the most part, video assistant referees are getting them right because they have the technology to do so. Judgment calls, VAR can complicate the process and make it worse, not better. And that's not what we want. And I hope that all of the talk about VAR can make that separation, because the whole process, the whole addition of VAR is a good thing for the game, in my opinion. Having it is good. Still down to the people using it, and it's down to separating that out. The yes-nos should be easy. It's the other ones that are the hard thing, and they were hard to begin with. They were hard without VAR. They're still hard. They're going to be hard because they're judgment calls. But VAR should be able to give a referee more information and more input in making those tough decisions. And that's what we want to see. Was it a penalty or not? Because was it a foul or not? Was it a red card or not? Should it be a red card or not? Those types of situations. Those are hard calls to make in the run of play, in any game, anywhere in the world. VAR should make them easier for referees to get as close to right as they possibly can. That's what VAR should be doing, in my opinion. And hopefully it can. And I think for the most part it does. But the flare-up this summer is more about the laws of the game than the actual video assistant referee process. Although I do think for some, VAR is completely new and they're not used to it. And they're freaking out about it, which we all did with MLS anyway when it started it. And I think which happened in other leagues too. But I thought VAR last summer at the World Cup, for the most part, was really good. I think VAR in the Bundesliga is, for the most part, really good. I think VAR this season in Major League Soccer has been, for the most part, really good. It's right now, it's the laws of the game and the new interpretations that are major issues, and hopefully they can get resolved. We're going to stop talking about referees in hour number 2, I promise you. And we're going to talk about other stuff. But I hope that provides some more context to the whole discussion. And let us know what you think. Tweet us at Soccer Down Here. We're going to move on to Tafka's opus about MLS expansion and MLS formatting and those types of things. But first, we're going to get into the results from yesterday. U.S. Open Cup, lots of games played, lots of really good matches last night. We're going to talk about that right after the break.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Hola, welcome back. Hour number 2, SDH, June 20th, Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. Let's get into the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup from last night. Really good matches across the board for the most part. I did not stay up to watch Portland wreck shop over the LA Galaxy 4-0.
No.
Own goal to kick things off in the 28th from Perry Kitchen. Then Brian Fernandez keeps doing what he's been doing and scoring goals. In the 34th, Sebastian Blanco in the 37th. It's 3-0 at halftime. They get one more late, and it's 4-0. Huge win for the Timbers. Did watch St. Louis and FC Cincinnati, and it was a goal from the captain, Sam Fink, in the 93rd minute. St. Louis 1, FC Cincinnati 0. And when you look at the numbers in this one, possession, yes, Cincinnati had that, but they didn't create much with it, only 2 shots on target. St. Louis was much better on the break. They were much better on set pieces, and they were the better team. They deserved to win this.
And late Fernando Adi injury had him taken off. FC Cincinnati was out of subs in the added minutes that were on the shelf, and St. Louis takes advantage. Sam Fink unmarked at the back post, heads it in, heads it down, heads it in. St. Louis moves on.
Well, Fernando Adi was not going to be marking Sam Fink, and if that was the problem, then that's on FC Cincinnati and their technical staff, because it's a set piece. Being shorthanded on that set piece shouldn't make a difference. That's just bad marking. And if you've looked at St. Louis this season at all, you know that Sam Fink is the target on set pieces. He's tied for the team leading goals. That's the guy. That's the number one guy you mark.
And no one was around him.
That's poor from Cincinnati, and they lost their heads in a key situation. So they get punished, and they go home, and St. Louis FC will be coming to Kennesaw to face Atlanta United July 10th. It's a 7:30 kick, and I believe tickets are going on sale today, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. The emails went out last night.
There you go. So, other games. The other USL Championship team left in the tournament is still left in the tournament. New Mexico United gives up a goal in the 41st to Brandon Cervania, and it was a golazo. Kevon Frater, of course, gets one back in the 45th, and then Sam Hamilton on a scrum inside the 18 pokes it home, and New Mexico goes to SMU and beats FC Dallas. In a kind of a different game for New Mexico. We see them usually, so explosive going forward. They only had 3 shots on target here. They score on 2 of them, and they do enough to get the win. It's a huge win for New Mexico, and now they go to Minnesota to face the Loons.
And I'm going to phrase this a certain way, and just how cool is that you have teams from the USL Championship who go out of character and come home with a win, which means they continue on. That's part of, for me, it's one of the aspects of the U.S. Open Cup that I've always loved and embraced, is the opportunity in this all-in for the lower division side to come up, bite a team on any given day, and move on. And we had 2 of those last night. And I know that, for you and I who sit there and we know about New Mexico United, we know about Kevon Frater, I think that also, and we know about Sam Fink, and we know about St. Louis. But for the rest of the country to see these quality stories like we've already seen and like we've talked about on the show, I just think that it's cool to add this extra layer to all of that, where now they're seen on more of a stage than they have been before and get the exposure that they haven't had previously.
Yeah, 100%. New Mexico and Minnesota will be one of the highlighted games in the quarterfinal round.
Take the over.
Sure. Probably. It's the Cup. You never quite know, and we'll see where those teams are at that stage as schedules get congested. Orlando advances. They get past New England. It goes to extra time scoreless. Benji Michelle, 96th minute. Tesho Akindele, 101st. New England, Justin Rennicks, they get one back, 117th. New England, 22 shots, but only 3 on target, and they're not able to get past Orlando, who was pretty decent in this one. And coming out in extra time, they looked pretty good. They looked really good at getting to the 2-0 lead, and then you give up one late, but you see it out.
And so Orlando hosts in the next go-round?
Yes, they do. And they host NYCFC, who beat DC on the road at Audi Field in a really good match. It was a great first half. Wayne Rooney opened the scoring 32nd. Alexandru Matricia, Ismail Tajori Shradi, 38th and 41st. And NYCFC had the better of the play here. They had more shots. They had far more shots on target. Chris Seitz with 7 saves. 57% of the possession for NYC. They were the better team, but DC hung around, had some scares late, but Dome Tarrant's squad moves on to go face Orlando City now.
Do we have an Abear update?
No, we do not.
Because I think
happen.
So he had an injury, source of concern on the 280 characters per submission part of social media, but have not seen anything about Abear and the injury that he suffered last night.
Yeah, I mean, but these are things people do need to get used to. Okay, injury happens last night in a match. They were on the road. You're not going to know anything the next morning. You might know something by the next afternoon. You probably won't know anything until the following day, especially when a team's traveling, because you want to get him back. You want him to see your full medical staff. You want to get a full evaluation. That's where this is going to be. So it's really difficult to know anything further immediately after a match, and NYC will be anxiously awaiting that word on Abear. Portland is awaiting their opponent in the quarterfinals. One more match tonight, LAFC hosting San Jose at Bank of California Stadium. Winner actually hosts Portland, if I'm not mistaken. Other quarterfinals, as we said, Orlando hosting NYC, Atlanta hosting St. Louis, Minnesota United hosting New Mexico. After the matches on July 10th, the draw will be held for the semifinal hosting situations and the final hosting scenarios. So you get through the quarters, you're 2 games away from lifting a trophy, 2 games away from qualifying for CONCACAF Champions League. And yeah, people have asked, I mean, if St. Louis or New Mexico win this thing, they are in CONCACAF Champions League. They're 3 games away now.
At WDE_Mitchell, War Eagle Mitchell. Who would you put up top for MLS matches while Joseph is at Copa America? Romario, Vasquez, Tito if healthy. Lots of schedule congestion starting June 26th.
Well, you can only take it one game at a time, and right now it's Brandon Vasquez because you don't know Tito's health, and Vasquez has been the better of the two between him and Romario Williams. So right now it's Brandon Vasquez starting on Wednesday. That might change on the Saturday coming back to play Montreal, and then it might change again. It's probably going to be a game-by-game decision. So at the moment, I think it's Brandon Vasquez.
Then Jillian Gaffigan comes in and says that Don Garber speaks very highly of St. Louis. I think they're a shoo-in for expansion. Charlotte has a potential if they can figure out a stadium situation that makes sense. The area has absolutely huge youth and adult leagues to engage.
I think Charlotte, with David Tepper involved and the shared ownership with the Carolina Panthers, I think they're going to be in MLS at some point. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be this next round. I don't know if it's going to be something down the road if the league continues to expand. I don't know if it's going to be relocation of somebody or what, but I think they're in. I think Tepper wants to do it. I think he wants to do it in combination with a renovated Bank of America Stadium or a new stadium along the lines of Mercedes-Benz. I think he wants it, and I think he's the right person to bring it into Charlotte, and I think it'll happen eventually. When, I don't know, but eventually, yes. St. Louis, it's not in conjunction with St. Louis FC, but yeah, they have everything in place, it seems like, to be one of the next teams in the league, and I think they will be. I think it's theirs and Sacramento's to lose. And then you have the final spot that could go a number of different places. But yeah, I think St. Louis is a shoe-in for sure. I'm curious to see that final spot outside of St. Louis and Sacramento getting 28 and 29. Who's next to make it 30? I think Charlotte will be in that conversation. Raleigh is likely going to be in that conversation. Detroit's in the conversation. Phoenix is in the conversation. San Diego could be in the conversation. Lots of different things could be going on with that final spot.
Vegas?
Yeah, no, I mean, we just name a bunch of cities, and I'll say yes. That's basically where we're at. Who's further
Bismarck.
along? Stop. Who's further along? Don't know. Because we don't know what the timeline, we don't know what they're looking for out of that just yet. They got to get 28 and 29 nailed down first, and those are St. Louis and Sacramento's to lose. I think they're in good enough shape. I think both are well-positioned now to get it done. So you nail that down, and then you set the criteria for number 30 and let the games begin. Because I think it's the same thing that's going to happen. You're going to have a number of quality bids, more bids than you have spots for, and you're going to say, well, why stop now? Because what's the difference between 30 and 32? Nothing, really.
I was going to ask you.
There's not. I mean, what is?
I'm just going to say, with all these quality bids in quality cities chasing after 30, and you have all of these groups, then stopping at 32, going to 32 instead of stopping at 30, gives you 4x8.
The logistics of it are part of it, and we're about to start talking about that after a break. That's part of it. But in the grand scheme of things, is there really a difference between going from 30 teams to 32 if you have quality ownership who want to come in and spend a boatload of money to do it? I don't think there is. So then you have bigger questions. Our friend Tafka took on some of those questions. I think he's still going to be taking them on because there's a lot more things to write for Tafka because he has set a very high bar for this opus. And chapter 1 of the opus is over at soccerdownhere.net. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. I'm going to retweet the Cliffs Notes version to the opus so you know where we're at. Retweet that now from my account at Longshoe. We're going to start talking about it after the break. Hang out with us. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Too excited. Itchy trigger finger. Kafka wrote about 7 gazillion words that we need to talk about. How is MLS going to grow? We just talked about expansion. St. Louis, Sacramento seem to be no-brainers. Who's 30? We don't know yet. A lot of cities want it. A lot of ownership groups want it, and they want to cut a big check to get in because the league's growing, and the valuations of clubs are growing, and that's the ultimate thing here. I think a lot of people get hung up on, well, the TV ratings aren't growing. Actually, they are just really, really small. They're growing, and compared to some other TV ratings that aren't, you'll take small gains. Digital's growing. Like there's growth on that side. Revenue and in terms of attendance, yeah, it's growing. It's mostly growing because of the new teams coming in, but it's growing. Are there still issues? Of course. But the number one thing that's going to measure the health of this is the franchise valuation. How much is it worth if somebody's going to sell it? And that's growing. And that's growing faster than I think Forbes can keep up with it. And the Orlando sale last year showed that. I think that was a alarm bells going off type of thing, where it is, okay, they were valued at like $300 million, but he sold 10% for a valuation at $500 million. Whew, okay. I think it's growing really, really fast. It's a good investment right now. So that's different. And I think Tafka lays that out at the beginning of his piece over at soccerdownhere.net. MLS is in a very different place now than they were even 5 years ago, I think. The beginning, it was just stay afloat, stay alive. They had to retract after adding 2 teams. They were back to 10. From there, it's been consistent growth outside of the Chivas USA situation. And when they did that one, that was a different time for the league in 2005, where Chivas USA comes in alongside Real Salt Lake, who's been very successful. You had to bring in somebody with Real Salt Lake, and you had to take a chance. And they did, and it served its purpose. It eventually gets you to LAFC, which has been successful. Outside of that, it's been growth. But I think it changed in 2 ways between 2013 and 2017. One way was the additions of Orlando and NYC. Those felt bigger than other expansions had at times. Now, you had the Cascadia ones come in, but that's a whole different situation because they had a history that really not many other clubs in the United States or Canada could be in that same conversation. Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, even Montreal, which has a long history. Montreal Impact have a long history and a very well-established history. So you add all of them. You got it 100% right when you added Toronto, even though they couldn't get it right on the field for a long, long time. But they changed the way things were perceived, especially from a supporters culture standpoint. Then you get the Cascadias come in. Then your next move, you nailed it. Even with Yankee Stadium being part of it. You nailed it with NYC coming in because you had that second team in the city, in New York. I think it helped with your TV deals that you signed where you were able to get decent money coming in for the first time ever. And then you added Miami, and they're going to finally hit the field next year. And yes, it seems like David Beckham will be part of the ownership group. And you added Atlanta. Minnesota was another good addition. But Atlanta has changed what this league can be. Miami will change perception of this league around the world. LAFC, in some ways, changes how the league can be. In other ways, it is as successful as it can be in the MLS 2.0, 2.5, 3.0 world because it is in a smaller stadium. I think Atlanta is showing, well, wait a minute. We can be bigger than 25,000 seats or 20,000 seats. Now that growth is a different conversation because you are kind of in between. You have Nashville building a stadium that'll seat 30. You have Cincinnati building a stadium that'll seat 26. You have Austin building a stadium that'll seat 20, but they say they have season ticket deposits for 30. Now you're getting into a different world. And how do you deal with it? And you also do have to think about the formatting. I don't know if the formatting should be the number one factor. And I've said many times over the years, I don't think the geography should be the number one factor on which cities you're bringing into the league. It is a factor. I think the number one factor is quality ownership because that's going to push the league into a better situation. And Tofka says the beauty of MLS is the fact that it's a young league growing into the world game. And it's not burdened by some of the other situations in other countries. It's not burdened by history as much as anything. They can do it differently. They can have 27 teams. They can have 30. Can have 32. They can, because there's no arbitrary thing that says, well, no, a first division's 20 teams. Well, why? Well, it just is. Well, no, why? That's how we've always done it. It just is. You're not burdened by any of that. You can be whatever you want to be. So as Tofka is starting to set up in his opus, what is the way it should go? John, you've read it. You've seen the Cliff's Notes. You kind of know where Tofka's coming from. For you, when we talk competition structure, what matters to you?
Well, and see, and this is where I'm a bit torn. And rivalries, to me, when it comes to competition structure, are a part of it.
Yeah, 100%.
But because a rival is not necessarily a geographic tie now. I mean, yes, in other sports here in this part of the world, we've grown up with the notion of, okay, if you're a Georgia fan, then Jason, who are your rivals?
Everybody.
It's South Carolina. It's Clemson. It's Georgia Tech.
Every other game.
Yeah. So having that ingrained in some of the markets, it's different market to market. I'm saying it's different market to market though. Because,
I don't think it's fair, because if we're talking college sports and uber regionalization, then yeah, your rivalries are going to be based on location. But in the NBA, huge rivalry throughout the 80s. Lakers-Celtics.
Celtics-Lakers. I know.
Yeah, but they barely played in the regular season. It was all about the finals. Like, you can't change the structure of the league to make sure they play each other a bunch during the regular season because it became a rivalry. So rivalries are important, and I think the overwhelming majority of rivalries are geographic.
And that's why in analyzing this, it was like, okay, yeah, I know that if you're Atlanta United, you're going to want to play the purple team. And then you have this burgeoning rivalry with Nashville that's coming. And we're seeing what Nashville is bringing to the table, being linked to Juan Fran yesterday. So they're coming at it very seriously. You know that there's going to be probably a bit with Miami or possibly with a Charlotte or things like that. And you're going to have Red Bulls and all of that. And I know that there are rivalries that are building with Western Conference teams, but that's going to take some time.
Hold on. One thing.
Yeah.
Rivalries building with Western Conference teams, no. I disagree in the sense of what a rivalry is. Is a game with Portland this year going to have a little extra sauce to it? Yeah, because they played an MLS Cup. That's just normal. The game with LAFC this year, yeah, it'll have some extra sauce because they're really good and people are comparing the two. That's not a rivalry.
No.
Atlanta and Red Bulls has become a rivalry on the field.
Yes.
And that's good. Atlanta and Orlando is a rivalry because of geography. And I think Atlanta and Nashville will be, and if Charlotte comes in, they will be, and Miami, Orlando will be, and Nashville, Cincinnati will be, and Columbus, Cincinnati is and will be even more. Those are geography rivalries that, are they all the same level of intensity? No. But are they all potential rivalries or rivalry to some degree? Yes, they are. But other rivalries can be formed on the field.
Yes.
But they're different. And they're going to be accentuated more if you play each other on a regular basis. And that's why the Western Conference ones right now, big games are not rivalries. Big games are big games.
Yeah. Because if you look at the West right now, the one that popped into my head was Portland, and that was it. And that was just because of the history with MLS.
It's a big game.
With MLS.
It's not a rivalry. Yeah. There's no rivalry to it. It's just a big game because it's a rematch of MLS Cup last year.
And I also think that because you're only a couple of years old, you're still trying to figure out who those other rivalries are other than your geographic sense. It's still a building relationship and trying to figure out who those may be.
Atlanta's different, too. I mean, New York, L.A., in whatever sport with whatever combination of teams is going to feel like that because it's New York and Los Angeles.
Yes.
It just is what it is. TV's going to make it something because it's
Knicks, Lakers, Mets, Dodgers, Yankees, Dodgers. Yeah,
it's always a little extra. That's okay.
But, yeah, in MLS currently, it is stuff that is either geographic or that has been built over time through being played multiple times.
So this is one thing that I would take exception to some of Tafka's reasoning in that he says keep the league and I'm going from the Cliffs Notes instead of the full opus. You read the whole thing over at soccerdownhere.net, but the major points is what we're considering here. Conference setup, is it 2, is it 3, is it 4? I don't know what it is yet because I don't know what the final number is going to be. But where Tafka says, and his opinion is to keep the league competition on a national scale, don't overly limit opponents by geographic restrictions, and he doesn't like divisions because they're part of that narrowing process. I say embrace geographic rivalries, not to diminish the rest of everything, but the league has grown dramatically because of those geographic rivalry matches, and I don't want to run away from them. So it is a factor, in my opinion. Size of the regular season, I don't feel like it can drop lower than it is now. I think 34 games is the minimum. I think you could go up to 38, but my bigger issue is the calendar as opposed to the number of games. Right now, 34 games and the number of weeks that they have set is not a good setup because you have too many midweek games. You have too many games on short rest. It's not good for the competitive quality of the league.
Combine that with other competitions as well.
Well, that factors in. I mean, that's all part of it. 34 games in a longer run of weeks, sure. And I think it's worked in the past. If you're going to add 36 or 38 games in the regular season, you're going to have to add more weeks. You need to add more weeks anyway. You're going to have to add even more weeks if you're going to get to that. And, hey, if the 2022 World Cup's not going to be in Qatar and it's going to be in Australia or somewhere else and it's not going to be in the middle of the winter, then this whole thing about doing the schedule the way they did this year to start moving towards that, you can chuck that into the trash bin. I do think that there were other considerations, but they were exaggerated because of the World Cup, that you needed to have an MLS Cup final in 2022 before players left for the World Cup. You could not have a final with players away on international duty. You could not allow that to happen. So you started moving in that direction. There were other things that were said that were definitely part of it, but I think the number one factor was that. Now that might not even be the case. We'll see. It's FIFA. Anything can happen. We'll see. But you're going to have to add, in my opinion, no matter how many games you have in the regular season, you're going to have to add more weeks to the calendar. And hopefully you'll add at least a couple next year, and we'll see what that does. Other things for Tafka on goals of the structure. He doesn't want divisions. He's okay with 3 conferences. He wants conference sizes equal. I'm with him there. Home game totals equal between teams. That has to be. That's a non-negotiable for me. You can't have an odd number of games with some teams playing one more home game than others. You cannot have that. It's 34, it's 36, it's 38 games. It's got to be an even number. It's got to be an even number home away. Tafka says playing home and away is not a huge deal versus other elements of competitive integrity and broader selection of opponents, saying that you don't have to play every team home and away or every team in whatever structure, if it's conference, division, whatever. You need to have balance and it needs to make sense, but yeah, you're not with a large league going to be able to play everybody home and away. It's just not happening. So Tafka says 2 conferences best suits his competitive structure. 3 conferences is acceptable. I don't like 3 conferences at all. Because
how would
then
you structure the playoffs?
Well, that's the problem. Then it gets the playoffs really strange. Then you would have to structure the playoffs where your conference winners plus your best second place team get a bye into the next round. Then your however many other teams you have go into the first round, because you have to reward your conference winners, and you can't just reward 3. I guess you could, and then you create a bracket like the Women's World Cup where you have 2 matches between 2 second-place teams as opposed to group winners playing third-place teams. It's just it's awkward. It doesn't feel balanced. So I guess you would create a bracket with 3 conference winners plus your best second-place team into a bye into the second round of the playoffs, and then however many other teams you have in the playoffs would play down to match up there. It wouldn't be ideal, but that's the only way I think you could do it with 3 conferences. That's why I don't love 3 conferences.
Yeah, for me, if you go 2 conferences, 2 divisions, 4x8 at 32, it seems that there's at least an even-numbered attack that you can have when it comes to looking at postseason structure.
Yeah, I want to see where you get to this, because this is all about, right now, 30 clubs, or even starting to look ahead to 32, 3, 5, whatever. You're going to have an even number of clubs, and I think MLS is going to have to consider what it is past 30, because I don't see 30 being drop dead. I don't think it should be.
Not anymore.
I don't think it should be. And what I come back to, and the most overriding thing here for me is, you look at how leagues were 20 years in, and they were still figuring it out. You're about to celebrate your 25. You're still figuring it out at that stage. Look at the NFL 25 years in. Baseball is roughly the same structure it was for a long time 25 years in, but now it's radically changed. The NBA 25 years in. Have fun looking at that one. You're still figuring it out. So I'm not in this realm that I would say, well, just you can't go past that. You can't limit it. You can't have any more. You gotta keep a structure that makes sense, and it's got to stay consistent forever. Soccer and MLS and the business of it is not anywhere near what it was in 1996 as opposed to now. 1995, as you were putting together teams, you wanted to have 12 teams in the league day one, kicking off in 1995, by the way, which didn't happen. You pushed it back a year. You still wanted to have 12. You ended up having 10. You wanted to be in Atlanta, but you didn't have an owner. And Atlanta wanted to play at DeKalb Memorial Stadium as part of a large renovation ahead of the Olympics, where it would have been a track and field training facility. It would not be what it is now. So, I mean, go all you want now, but it wouldn't have been that. But none of that happened. That was what we were talking about in 1996, 1995, was we need owners. There's only a few. We need cities. Well, not all of them have suitable venues. We need people to buy season tickets. Columbus led the way in season tickets. That's why they got a team. They sold over 11,000 season ticket deposits. Killed everybody in that. That's why they got a team. They weren't on the map going into it. So take that just 25 years later to now, and because of the way the league has grown, you should say no to Las Vegas or Charlotte or Detroit when they want to play $250 million, $300 million to come in, and that combined with how you've seen the new teams come in and bring new blood and new life into this league. Why would you say no at this point? So you have to figure out how to add these teams in these cities in a structure that works from a competitive standpoint and continually redefine what MLS is. That's not easy. But you should not keep it to what it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, because that's just how it is. You're putting that 20,000 seat capacity on the league as a whole. You're putting that outdated viewpoint on the league as a whole if you do that. This league can be one of the biggest in the world, and it's going to be with all of these new owners and new cities that are not weighed down by the past. Columbus is weighed down by the past. New England is weighed down by the past. Dallas is weighed down by the past. Charlotte wouldn't be. Minnesota isn't. Nashville won't be. Cincinnati isn't. Why do we want to stop that? So now it's having these conversations like Tofka's opened up over at the website about how you grow. In my opinion, the question of if you grow is out the door. You keep growing while it makes sense, but you have to do it the right way. And that's the balance you got to hit.
Why would you want, or I guess, why would you not want to be in a town like a Las Vegas where they want to put you in a new dome? At least one of the ownership groups does.
I don't know.
That is attracting the Oakland Raiders and other businesses and Detroit, who wanted to at one point put themselves in Ford Field.
And everybody,
why?
That. And that's what I don't get. Why would you be like, okay, Detroit wanted to build a 20,000 seat stadium, and then they saw what Atlanta did, and they said, you know what, we could play at Ford Field and renovate it and make it work. And everybody's like, no, you can't do that. That's terrible. You've ruined your expansion bid. Really? That's how we're thinking? That's soccer people thinking that. That's American soccer people saying our product isn't good enough. Stop. Stop with that.
Yes,
What's
let's play an 18
here?
to 20,000 seat stadia across the country.
That's what people say.
I know.
Detroit people said you can't do that. That's wrong. People told Arthur Blank that too, and what happened? Is it a higher bar? Does that mean you have to be even better? Yep. Don't be afraid of being great. Don't say, well, we can't do that. We can't be that big, and that's what people say about MLS. Well, we can't
How
be
did
one
Arthur
of the biggest
Blank
leagues in the
get
world.
that big?
Because he said, shut up, I'm
Before
going to do it
MLS.
my way. Because I know what I'm doing. Did that with Home Depot.
Uh-huh.
Did that with the Atlanta Falcons. Look, the Atlanta Falcons are a completely different franchise than they were before he bought it. It's like night and day. And that's no disrespect to the Smith family. You wouldn't have the Falcons if Frank and Smith hadn't invested in it and brought the Falcons here. Professional sports in Atlanta would have been dramatically different. But Arthur Blank took
Especially
it to a whole
if
other
you
level.
moved him to Jacksonville.
Yeah, and almost happened. But Arthur Blank took it to a whole other level in professionalism and the way the team is positioned in the city, everything. It's night and day. The Falcons were an afterthought, and now they're the biggest team in the city, and they are. And that's completely fine. Atlanta United's right there. Because they didn't say, well, we can't be right there. We can't be bigger than the Braves or the Hawks. Who says? So if Detroit can make it work and play in a bigger stadium, do it. And don't be afraid.
Charlotte.
Yeah, if they can make it work, do it. Don't be scared. And that's what MLS has to get through, and that's a big part of this discussion with how the league grows. Don't be scared to continue to grow just because other leagues haven't. The United States is not the same country as other countries. It's not a small country. You can have more teams in a country this size at the first division level because it needs to be. If you can have a first division that's bigger, have it. Still need a second division. Still need a third. There's still going to be parts of the country that are underserved. But if you can sustain 40 first division teams, do it. Create the structure to where it makes sense and create the structure to where it's a great competition. But if the business is there to do it, do it. Don't be afraid of that. That's what I hope happens. I hope that we don't limit ourselves by stadium size, by league size, by what other countries do. Make this league the best that the United States and Canada can have. Make it that. There's no reason not to. There's no reason to say that, well, the Premier League's the biggest and we can't compete with that. Why can't you? Doesn't mean it happens tomorrow, but why can't you? That should be the goal, shouldn't it?
For every Atlanta, and this is something that we've done on the show from the absolute beginning. For every Atlanta, for every Orlando, for every pick your MLS side that you want to pick, there's an Asheville, there's a Greenville, there's a Statesboro, there's all of these markets, a Birmingham, a Memphis now.
But that's a broader conversation, and that's one I don't want to distract from Tofka's piece.
No.
The growth of the lower divisions is a vital piece as well, but that takes it into you thought Tofka had an opus. That takes it into something completely different. That takes it into a daytime soap opera that goes on for 40 years.
Yeah. Well,
so
I'll finish my sentence and then we can go on. But basically, if you don't have all of these larger markets that want to be a part of MLS, I don't think that you have just as many Division II, Division III, USL League One, USL League Two, USL Championship markets that want to get involved if they're not seeing what's going on at MLS level.
I don't know if I agree with that completely. I think maybe USL Championship has seen growth because of MLS growth, but below that, it trickles down, and I don't think it's affecting your NPSLs and USL League 2s and such, because Statesboro's not looking at MLS and saying, well, yeah, that's the world we can be in. And I don't think it really affects
No, but it's like, why can't we do what we do in our part of the world is what I'm saying. I don't think
But I don't think that changed because of Atlanta's success. I think Statesboro would have happened because Statesboro would have happened. Because it's built on an owner and a community, not anything that MLS has opened up. Could it look different without MLS completely? Yeah, it could. But I think at the grassroots, it's a different conversation. It's a different world. I mean, even from my experience with soccer in the streets, people would lump it in with youth soccer and growth, and it's a different world. It's not even the same thing. So the true grassroots, no, I don't think MLS directly affects it. I don't think it has much of an effect. USL Championship, which would be second division right under MLS, yeah, there's probably more of a direct correlation. USL League One right now feels like the gap between the two of pro that can't be as big as MLS and amateur semi-pro. And it's filling in that gap. So I don't think it's as directly affected by MLS either. MLS drives different conversations. I don't think it drives the grassroots conversation. The grassroots can be successful without MLS. And I think the more that the grassroots defines its success by MLS, the more that maybe it confuses itself. MLS is in its world, and the high-level professional, even like a New Mexico and USL Championship teams, are in their world. Asheville City is in a different world.
Yeah.
It just is. I mean, if you're a grassroots team near an MLS team, little different conversation. But like Asheville City is completely organic in Asheville. It is a representation of Asheville. Nothing to do with Atlanta or Charlotte and USL Championship or Charleston or any of that. It's Asheville. It is it. And that's really cool. So MLS's growth is about MLS, and it needs to be. It doesn't need to be about anything else. I think people are to a point that they're like, well, like MLS and U.S. soccer should make MLS do this. Go tell the FA to make the Premier League do something. That's why the Premier League broke away from the Football League. Like, do they work together? Yeah. But did it break away? Yes. Because those clubs wanted that money, and they wanted to be able to do what they wanted to do. MLS started in that situation because that's how our sports are. You know, you don't have a national governing body for American football that has any real power like that. It's the NFL. I guess USA Basketball has more power, but yeah, they're not telling the NBA to do something. And I mean, we see that you can't even have a Olympic hockey tournament now because the NHL says no.
Yeah.
A real one anyway. Soccer's different around the world, but in the United States, the league structure is separate from whatever governing body it is. So, look, we're finding our own way, and it's growing fast at a rate that you do have to think about these situations of growth. And Tofka's already making sneak peeks to part 5 in his tweets, saying that he's guessing 34 is the final MLS club number. I wouldn't even set a number right now. I really wouldn't, because I don't think you should limit the growth if it's still there. You still got to get to 30, and then you got to make a decision. Do you go to 32? And then you got to make a decision to go to 34. But I don't know why I would put a wall at 34 if you've still got cities that are ready to take you to 36 and grow the league. Now, then, I think after 30,
get your MLS 1 and 2.
Well, you have to start thinking, and you have to start thinking about structure down the road, because once you get to 30, I don't think the demand is going to diminish, and I think you're going to have to make some decisions about how you structure to do it right. And that should be one thing on the table that should be talked about. And Mike Conti has suggested going MLS East-West as 2 separate first divisions, essentially. That's a structure you need to think about. Whatever kind of a national structure that you have with whatever conference structure that you have, to keep it close to as is, that needs to be thought about. But these are strategic planning things that MLS needs to be doing now, because I think it's very clear there is not a brick wall at 30, and there shouldn't be. And if there was, I would want to take a sledgehammer to it. We'll see what happens. We'll have more from Tofka next Tuesday. This is going to be a Tuesday Thoughts recurring feature, as long as Tofka's writing. So part 2 will be on Tuesday. It's not going to be a Thursday Thoughts recurring feature, because starting next week, we got Overreaction Thursday coming back.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it's going to be an evening Overreaction Thursday, because I'll be coming back from Toronto. So this type of talk will be on Tuesdays. And Tofka, thank you for putting all this thought and work in
no
it.
Kidding.
And branching out conversations that we've had over the years here on the show. So very, very cool. One question that Tofka threw out specifically before we go to break, he said, if you still keep your geographic rivals at least one iteration each season, is that not better than narrowing competition to divisional races between 8 or fewer teams? That's a big question. I'm not a huge fan of divisions either in that regard. I'm not as against it as Tofka is. Yeah, I wouldn't want to necessarily do that, but you might not have a better way to set up the competitive structure. And I do think the geographic rivals are vital, because I think that was a key part of MLS 2.0. MLS 2.0 for me was the growth of the supporters culture, and the feel of the league in Toronto was critical to that. But then it built upon that with Seattle, Portland. That was key. That excitement and that flavor pushed the league forward, and I don't want to lose that. So how do you find the balance? And that's where people make the big bucks, because I think it is a very important part of it. And if I had to make a decision between divisions and having that, and having Seattle, Portland play home and away, or no divisions and not having Seattle, Portland play home and away in a season, I would probably lean to the divisions. Now, that's a very narrow thing that would, be part of a bigger conversation. But yeah, I would lean to wanting to have those geographic rivals play twice a year. I really would. I think it's really important for the look and feel and excitement of the league. And I think the rivalries have been a big part of that. And that's why they push them. That's why it's a big deal. That's why it's a sponsored element of Major League Soccer. It's a big deal. Let's take a break. Thank you, Tofka. Thanks, everybody. We're going to get all of your Thursday thoughts and all of your questions right after this Last call for questions at Soccer Down Here on Twitter. Be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Questions, comments, complaints, whatever you have. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. Use the Thursday Thoughts hashtag if you can, and let's get to those. I think John still has a complaint about the grassroots side of things.
Well, no, I just think that you have teams that are markets, towns, regardless of size, whatever you want to sit there and say. And I think that if you're looking to start something and you know that a culture is there, you can use the reference points around you as the basis to beginning whatever you want to begin at, whatever division you want to begin it at. I'm not saying that, if a town of 50,000 is looking at a town of 4 million and sitting there thinking, yeah, we can do what the 4 million is doing and we can be an MLS. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I think that there are elements of things that you see going on around you that you can add to your own dynamic and have impact in your own society, regardless of size.
In general, I disagree. In some cases, yeah. I think I'm trying to think of a good one to compare it to. Like, if you are in a town near a major market that has that, I would agree with you completely. But I think it's also if you are in a smaller market that has nothing to do with a major market, I don't think it has any effect. I don't think Asheville saw what happened in Atlanta. Well, Asheville was going to start about the same time, so no, it didn't. I think Asheville saw what they saw in themselves to create what's going on with them. But no, I think that's far more common in the grassroots. I think that is does it happen the way you're saying it? Yes. But does it happen on a regular basis? I don't think it does. I think the Asheville situation is what happens more on the grassroots. At least the successful ones. Because I think the ones that are looking at something else outside of their community and saying strictly that, well, it happened there, we can do this, are going to fail. If you do that, if you see something that happens in a bigger market and you say, well, we could do that here, but we have to do it like this, that can work. But I don't think that happens as often as it's like Asheville, where it's, hey, we can do this.
All right, we got questions and thoughts and stuff.
Cool. Let's get into thoughts and stuff.
All right. El Mataflo says it's awfully fitting that Argentina's goal scorers yesterday were Milagros Menendez and Florencia Bonsegundo. Miracles and good second, translated.
Yes. That was, I mean, I am not going to lie. Like, when they came back and got that goal, I absolutely had tears in my eyes because of what it meant to that team. I mean,
It's tremendous.
You could see it in their reactions. It was not a normal, this is an unbelievable comeback reaction. That was mixed in, but it was a sea change moment for the women's game in Argentina. So it was that big of a deal, and it was special. And, yeah, sometimes miracles do happen. I hope that this is a huge jump-off point for the women's game in Argentina and across South America, because they were great yesterday in that whole situation coming back. I wish there had been more stoppage time to where we could have seen if there was actually a winner in that game.
I guess this is an air horn one from Daniel Price.
Hold on. Ooh, where are my air horns? My air horn is hiding.
I didn't do it.
Oh, yeah, my air horn is not on the new computer. So I have, let's see, what do we have instead of an air horn? I have thunder and lightning.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, sure, why not?
All right. Thunder and lightning. What do we have?
So the great MLS Open Cup choke of 2019, 2 cup sets. If we lose to St. Louis, I will eat my shoe.
That's gross. That's not a good idea at all. Can you even safely do that?
I don't know. Depends on what it's made of. I don't know if patent leather would aid or abet or would be a detraction. I don't know. I don't normally
I'm
eat
going
shoes.
to ask. One, I hope it doesn't happen, but 2, I'm going to ask that not take place if it does happen, because I cannot condone any potential choking or sicknesses that come from eating shoes.
Nathan Pugh, the path to the U.S. Open Cup finalists said Atlanta should be clear-cut favorites. Hopefully, Frank DeBoer will continue with strong 18s to make that a real push.
Yeah, I think he will, but it is going to be a little tricky when you look at the schedule. And we've said 9 games in a month, 9 games between June 26 and July 26. And where this one falls in it is after the steel cage match with the New York Red Bulls on Sunday, July 7th, and before a trip to Seattle on July 14th. That's a tough spot for this game to fall in. I hope, and I don't expect Frank DeBoer to look down on the level of competition. I don't think he will go with a completely second-choice lineup because it's St. Louis FC. But I hope that Atlanta is able to field a strong lineup there and take care of business, because the opportunity is 100% there. I think it will probably be a situation where it's who can play, who is feeling it after playing in Toronto on the 26th, back here to play Montreal at home on the 29th, going to Chicago July 3rd, coming back to play the Red Bulls July 7th, then St. Louis. So that will be game 5 in 2 weeks. Not everybody who starts all those other 4, if I don't know how many people are going to start all 4 of those. Not all of them are going to be ready to play in that one against St. Louis. You're going to have to rotate to a degree. How much is the question? We'll have to see.
Andrew Baker, and he sent in a couple this morning, so this is the first one that he sent in. So, soccer listening in Germany. Maybe this was talked about before. It feels pretty absurd to me that local radio can't call U.S. Open Cup games. First, at U.S. Soccer doesn't broadcast the draw, and then this. It's like they hired Idi Amin as their marketing director. It's insane.
That's a little harsh. Actually, that's a whole lot harsh. But yeah, I wish we were calling it on local radio. I feel like it is a loss for the tournament to not have teams have their local calls on radio. There's just a difference. I mean, and I think some fans like the local aspect of a call, and some don't care, and that's completely cool. But I think we've been lucky to have that connection here in Atlanta where there are people who will listen to the local call as opposed to listening to a national call, and that's amazing. And not every market has that option, but I feel like we've been able to build that audience. And I don't think that in this case you would have had a large number of people who said, well, I'm not going to get a subscription to ESPN Plus to watch this. I'm just going to listen to the radio call. And that's why they do it. I mean, it's understandable. You invest in it. I don't know what they invested, but you invest in it. You invested in the production of every game, which you weren't doing before. You weren't doing that in any case before. So it's an investment in the tournament to do what they're doing. And that should absolutely be, applauded. But missing out on the local radio and the local flavor of it, I think it hurts in each market. And I think it hurts the local teams that are involved. It doesn't hurt the tournament as a whole. It hurts the local teams that are involved, and it limits the overall impact of the tournament. So I hope it's something that they reconsider as this tournament goes on and as the tournament continues to grow, because I don't think it detracts from ESPN Plus's coverage. I don't think it detracts from U.S. Soccer's investment in the tournament. I think it enhances the tournament and grows it. So I'm also biased in that, of course, and I would not try to say otherwise. I just feel like it's a bit of a loss for the tournament to not have local radio.
The Colonel came in.
What's up, Colonel?
Watching soccer is more fun when we could celebrate goals when they happened and not have to wait for a review. # Thursday Thoughts. Turns off brain. No more thinking.
Was it more fun when a call was wrong and you knew it was wrong, but it stood and it punished your team? And that would be the question I would have. Fun. No, it wasn't. Yeah. No, that was not more fun.
What I'm saying is that he...
No, I know what he said. Listen.
Yeah.
I know what was said because this has been said many times. But was it more fun to watch a goal scored that should not have counted against your team? Was that more fun? No, it wasn't. This is different, yes. Yes, there needs to be an adjustment. But do we want the calls to be right, or do we want bad calls? That's my issue here. And that would be my issue for people who don't want VAR because of that reason. Yeah, in the past, goal got celebrated because it got celebrated. Go ask England about 1986. VAR would have gotten rid of that goal. Probably pretty quickly, actually. Diego Maradona helped sell that goal by celebrating it. He said so. He said in his autobiography, he scores the goal, and he runs off, and he sees that he's peeking back, and he sees that the referee's going to allow it, and he's yelling at his teammates, come celebrate with me so they don't take this back. Like, do we want that instead? That's the trade-off. I want the calls to be right. I want them to be right as quickly as possible, but I want the calls to be right. I disagree that because of the celebration of goals that we should not get calls right. I don't think that's the way the game grows going forward. I think it needs to be right.
Thomas Gwynn says, I don't think the 2002 World Cup was more fun with the U.S. eliminated because Torsten Frings got away with a blatant handball on the goal line.
Yeah. I didn't like watching the Germans celebrate that save. They celebrated it. It was wrong. I don't like that argument. I disagree with it because I understand it. I understand that now you do wait on some goals, not on every goal, on some where there is a question about offside. But what was happening before was the AR would put their flag up or not. What was happening before VAR came in was a lot of times you would see the center referee go over and talk to the AR, and then a decision would be made. Before, it wasn't. The center referee just either accepted it or didn't accept it and blew the whistle or didn't blow the whistle and allowed the goal or didn't. You still had these situations. Video replay wasn't involved, and they didn't happen as often, but they still happened. And you had wrong calls happen. So I want the calls to be right. I want that decision to be made as fast as possible, and I think it will speed up as we get better with the situation. Replay in the NFL was bad at first, so bad that they voted it out, and so bad that for about 10 years after they brought it back in, they wouldn't approve it overall. They would approve it year by year, and it became a foregone conclusion that it was going to be approved, but they were so wary of it because of the bad problems with it before that they wouldn't say it is part of the rules now. And that only happened, I think, about 12 years ago or so. But they've still made the changes over time to try to make it better. And I think they need to continue to try to make it better. Every sport has replay now. Is there a sport that doesn't have any replay? Not a major one.
No.
Not a major one or an Olympic sport. I mean, all of our major
NASCAR?
professional leagues do. That's a whole different ball game, and I think they probably have something. If there's they have photo finish. I mean, wouldn't they have a photo finish situation?
Yeah, I mean, they have photo finish, yeah.
So that's a replay. It is. I mean, it absolutely is. And don't they have something about, like, penalties and such? I mean, they go back and they'll give penalties for people.
They have markers that are wired to the cars, and it registers speed. Telemetry is the word I was looking for. They have telemetry around the track, and that's not necessarily replay, but that lends itself to electronic review as opposed to anything else.
That's review. That's replay. So even NASCAR has replay. Major League Baseball has replay. Pro football, college football has replay. The NBA has replay. College basketball has replay. Cricket has replay. Rugby has replay. Olympic sports like swimming and track, replay. It's not going away. It needs to be good. It needs to be better. And the laws of the game need to continually be updated and enhanced now that you have replay. Because replay will shine a gigantic bright light on poorly written laws of the game or laws of the game that cannot be completely enforced. That's what replay will do. And that's where IFAB and the laws of the game have to be updated.
Katie Weaver, who is now charging her phone, by the way, says that giving a yellow for a keeper leaving early is like a flagrant foul every time someone gets the timing wrong on trying to take a charge in basketball.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. And I believe basketball, in the way that they do flagrant fouls, they use replay to try to not have bad flagrant foul calls because of how much of a strict punishment it is. The automatic yellow portion of that law, that's idiotic to me. That's the one that I have the biggest issue with, and please just remember all of this when it happens in the Women's World Cup and a goalkeeper is sent off in a shootout.
Yes.
Because I think it's happening, and I'm terrified for it, and Scotland's complaints about yesterday will look like zero when a team is knocked out of the World Cup because their goalkeeper was sent off.
Right now, Argentina would be the fourth before the games that have been played, but right now they currently are advancing in our Argentina talk this morning. They're the fourth 3 seed that would work their way through.
Yes, right now, but there's 2 games.
Right now.
But you got to paint the whole picture.
They
need Chile and Thailand to draw, along with Cameroon and New Zealand to draw.
Yes. That's a tall order.
How likely is that?
That's a tall order, sir.
Chile and Thailand are not drawing. Chile's winning that, and they're going through as a third-place team. I think.
Jim Lepp says keepers have been supposed to stay on the goal line for many years. In 1905, the goalkeeper was required to remain on the goal line. Failure to strictly enforce prior to current has created the uproar.
Yeah, absolutely. It has. I'm absolutely with it. And I can understand how if IFAB is locked in a room and not actually living in the world of soccer, and they look at it and they say, well, the law before was you had to have 2 feet on the line, and now we're saying you only have to have 1 foot on the line. So we're actually giving you guys, you goalkeepers, we're giving you more leeway. By the letter of the law, you are. But in the actual implementation of it, no, you're not. Because referees rarely called it. But they did call it sometimes, and that was the frustrating part of it. It's a situation where it was never called, but when it was called, it was correct. But you didn't know when that was going to happen. Hated it. This tries to eliminate that. Does it go too far in the other direction? That's a question that people need to decide. And if it does, then you're going to have to do the things we talked about in hour number 1, and you're going to have to draw with the disappearing spray, a temporary line that a goalkeeper can't cross. You're going to have to figure that out. And that's not going to be easy at all. Or you're going to have to adjust to the new law. But then the other part comes in, and this is as big of an issue to me. You write the new law. You have it be part of video assistant referees' purview. But it's become such an issue now that you have the Premier League saying, we will not have our video assistant referees look at this on penalty kicks. So they're basically saying the law is not good. And that needs to be dealt with. Either everybody's following the laws of the game, or the laws of the game need to change. But we should not be picking and choosing. It's a tough spot.
Yeah. Daniel Price, games advancing and ever evolving. People don't like change. Like with everything, there will be growing pains. People forget a time before VAR, and it will be an instrumental to how the game's played in the future. It'll just keep getting better.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the pushback for me on we'll get rid of VAR because it was better before. There were debates on bad calls before. Judgment calls are always going to be tricky, whether you have VAR or not. I think VAR can eliminate a lot of the issues before. Offside, it's yes or no now. And that's one of the most difficult calls in the game without VAR. But now it's draw a line, it's look at the video, it's yes or it's no. Can the law still be tweaked to be a little clearer? Sure, it can. But it's a decision that can be made with replay and made fairly quickly. That's good. That's progress. Handballs are always going to be a decision of the referee. Red cards, so many things that are going to be a decision of the referee on that. And in some of those cases, VAR can complicate it, and that's not what we want. But the situation with the goalkeeper's foot on the line, I mean, either the foot is on the line or it's not.
Yeah.
That's a yes or a no. And replay making
I've got that one
as a
figured
yes or a
out.
no, that's fine. But you have to deal with the consequences. And right now, the consequences are you're having a bunch of goalkeepers who are coming off the line and then getting an automatic yellow, which is stupid. And you're having a bunch of penalties retaken because you actually have a law about the penalties that is finally being enforced. And it's something that if we don't want it to be enforced, then you need to change the law. And I don't know how you change it to get to the way it was being called before because there was no rhyme or reason to it.
If it comes down to Atlanta, Orlando in the Open Cup semis, how lit will that be? Who hosts?
Don't know who hosts. The draw for semi and final hosting situations happens after July 10th, after those games are done. It is a bracket, and if Orlando wins and Atlanta wins, that is your semi. But we don't know who hosts. And it will be lit.
Yes. Thomas Gwynn says he doesn't like the idea of having a league where we only play teams like Orlando, D.C., Red Bulls, Nashville, NYCFC, etc. one time a season. I think any structure that limits the schedule that way is a total non-starter for me.
Yeah, I don't love it. I don't love it. But as you grow, these are the things that are going to have to come up. So do you get more regionalized and not play everybody in the league? I think people won't like that either. But these are the things that are going to come up. And that then takes the next step of, well, instead of going to 40 teams eventually, or 36 or whatever you start thinking about past 30, does that then take you into an MLS 1 and 2 because of the structure you want to have? And these are the things that are tough to say. Tafka, and this is almost impossible, and I hear you, Tafka, but I don't think it's actually going to happen. Tafka says he wants everybody not to judge the ideas until they see the entire picture of the league when he finishes the opus. That's difficult. I do agree.
Very.
Keep an open mind. You can't only judge until part 5 is out. But keep an open mind because this is a full process that he is writing through. It is an opus.
Yes.
There are points in it, though, that you can agree, disagree. I have part 2. I have not read part 2. So my thoughts on part 1 are my thoughts on part 1, not knowing what's coming. Just part 1. And
yes.
Just my thoughts on the league as a whole. So
yes.
I hear you, Tafka, but people are going to judge, and people will think about it as it goes and as it develops. Do have an open mind about the discussion. Yes, please.
Yes, and continue to interact through each section if you're going to interact after each section. Just continue to evolve your opinions as you go.
Yes, it's okay, and I will do it, and everybody should do it. It's okay if you think one way about what Tafka's saying here, but then he clarifies or adds or shows where he thinks it's going next, and you say, oh, well, I didn't agree with this, but I do see why he thought that way. And then you can still make your own judgment on if you agree or disagree.
Andrew Baker and Daniel Price was having to rethink his notion.
Uh-oh.
So Andrew wanted to know what kind of shoes Daniel would eat. Maybe there are differences in taste. And so for sanitary sake, Daniel may make shoes out of chocolate.
Okay, that works. Tafka says golf does not have replay. That's not true.
Well, I mean, they've got it in the truck, and the PGA officials can consult the production truck and see something in replay.
Shenanigans with Matt Kuchar, like asking for different looks and looking at it actually on the camera, and making an insane argument about a ball that bounced, created another. It was ridiculous. Another pitch mark or something. Like it took 10 minutes. It was insane. Matt Kuchar hasn't been helping himself in his career as of late. Just
no.
That didn't help either. So
no.
Yeah, there's replay in golf too. I can't think of any sport now that doesn't have replay. Hockey has replay. We didn't mention that
putt.
Putt-putt's not a sport. What are you insane? Like real sports.
Oh, real sports?
I said real major sports and or Olympic sports. That was my distinction.
See, but then when you get into the Olympic sports, you have TV production, so you're always going to have replay.
That's replay. But that doesn't matter. That's the whole point. That's replay. You didn't have TV production in 1935 or 1936 in the Olympics to use an Olympic.
You just went with the human element.
Because you didn't have it. Now you have it in every sport. Soccer was one of the last ones to have it. It's not going away.
No, it's not. And Andrew's question has given Daniel and his friends a newfound and profound respect for you and Mike on the call.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
Buddy listens exclusively to the radio call, and he's perturbed not to have it for the Open Cup. He had me on his stream call it for him over Discord.
That's pretty awesome.
Yep. Jane M's with a roster question.
Okay.
Is it possible to waive Kratz or put him on the long-term injured list to free up a senior roster spot in the upcoming transfer window? Also, what should be the minimum capacity for future soccer-specific stadia going forward? DC and LAFC look to be too small. Post-World Cup 26, a few others as well.
Let's start from the back. I agree. It's too small. They need to be bigger or have very clear expansion plans that can be quickly implemented. I feel like the starting point should be 30. That's where I would start, is 30,000. I guess you could tweak it a little bit market to market. Bank of California always felt like it was going to be small to me. Audi Field felt like a little bit of a wasted opportunity in what it could be, and I know they have some limitations just based off the actual footprint. I don't know what their plans are, if they ever did want to expand it or if they even could. But 30 feels like the jump-off point for me. Roster options, it's an option, I believe. It's definitely an option to waive a player. Is it an option to put Kevin Kratz on the season-ending injury list? I believe it is, but I don't know. We don't know the injury situation yet. So it's a little early to do that. And if you do that, he's done for the year. You can't bring him back. So you don't want to do that unless you have to. You might have to. And I think that would be what you would probably want to do in this situation if you can. I don't think you would want to waive an injured player. And I don't know what the rules are on that, because there are rules in other leagues as part of the negotiation in a CBA that you can't waive or cut an injured player. Am I wrong in that, John? I believe, at least in the NFL, I know there's things about injury settlements and such.
Yeah, you can do injury settlements in the NFL, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything like that in MLS, and I don't know if there's a restriction on waiving or cutting an injured player.
Season-ending injury list according to the rules of MLS.
Yeah, got that for sure, and that's a possibility.
Injury replacement player in accordance with parameters below. Club remains responsible for injured players' full salary budget charge. Clubs may execute a trade to create salary budget space in order to sign an injury replacement. And it's the only circumstance in which a club may trade for salary budget space. Clubs are only able to receive budget relief paid out of the club's own pocket for a season-ending injury under the following parameters. Injured player must be earning at least $100,000 a year.
Check.
Must have suffered the season-ending injury prior to the close of the primary transfer window, and the new player must be signed as of such date.
That's a weird one. Season-ending injury list might be a little trickier than you would think.
Injury replacement player may earn up to $250,000, but not more than the player who suffered the season-ending injury.
Okay.
Club is ultimately responsible for the payment of the replacement player's salary, which will not be charged to the club's budget, and the clubs will only be allowed to sign one such season-ending injury replacement player a year. If the injured player occupies an international roster slot, the season-ending injury replacement player may also be an international player and occupy such a slot.
Okay, so there's options. There's possibilities. A lot of it's going to depend on the prognosis, so stay tuned. But yes, the team would have some options. Now, that whole thing about the transfer window and this and that can make it a little tricky. I don't know what kind of wiggle room there is there. But, yeah, you do have some options. I think right now you're trying to get a prognosis and figure out what your next steps are. Because I do think you're going to need a little more depth in the middle of the park.
And I believe we are officially caught up, sir.
All right. That is excellent. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the conversation this morning. Thanks for indulging our referee workshop, trying to figure out what.
And there's a lot of Tafka discussion on the timeline, too.
Yes, and continue that, please. And Tafka, continue chiming back in. And we will have part 2 on Tuesday as we continue to evolve in Major League Soccer via the Tafka Opus. We'll have a World Cup date later today, too. 4 games today, the finales of Group E and F. United States at 3 o'clock against Sweden. It's not going to be easy It's not going to be Chile. It's not going to be Thailand. Sweden knocked the U.S. out in the Olympics in 2016 by playing very defensive. I don't know if they do that here per se because it's not a knockout game. It's a game where Sweden comes in. They have to win if they want to win the group. They don't have to sit back and defend to try to get a result. They could. They might choose to sit back and counter. I'll be curious to see their approach. I'll be curious to see the starting lineup for the United States. The early game as well, the Netherlands and Canada game is intriguing. I feel like the Dutch have to go for a win here to make a statement. This is a team that can be a contender. I don't know if they've proven themselves to be a contender as of yet. I just don't know if that's necessarily the case yet. They win over Canada and a convincing win, I think that would prove the Netherlands to be a contender in this tournament. And kind of the same goes for Canada. I feel like they are more of a contender than the Netherlands, but if they have a convincing win, then you have to look at Canada as one of the favorites. The other two games between the two teams that have lost every game in the tournament in each group, they do matter for third place potential qualification. Winners have a good shot of going through. Chile has to overturn goal differential. I think they need to win by 3 to go through instead of Nigeria. That's possible. That's very possible against Thailand. The other game, Cameroon and New Zealand, two fairly defensive teams. Somebody's going to have to open up and go for a win here. So Cameroon, New Zealand at noon. Canada, Netherlands at noon. Chile, Thailand at 3. United States, Sweden at 3. We'll have a World Cup date around the dinner time hour to recap everything from the finales of the group stage and look ahead to the first knockout round games. I mentioned it on the Cup date. Germany plays a third-place team on Saturday. They don't know who that's going to be until roughly 5 o'clock today. Whoever it is doesn't know that they're playing Germany until roughly 5 o'clock today. That is not ideal.
No,
that is not a good structure. I don't know why they have that game where it is in the bracket. That's not good, and that's a big mistake by FIFA. They're playing a third-place team. Germany should win that game anyway, but you're making it even more difficult for the third-place team with short notice to prepare for Germany because there's multiple teams it could be right now. Not cool. Not a good situation. That's it for today. On the show, we'll be back tomorrow with a Friday flashback. If you have suggestions for a Friday flashback topic, go ahead and send them our way on Twitter at SoccerDownHere. I will also get you ready for the weekend in MLS as MLS play returns this weekend. Toronto plays this weekend, and Atlanta United fans will be looking at that one as Toronto will be playing on short rest at home against Atlanta next Wednesday. Finally, Atlanta gets a situation like that. Other matches around the league, too. We've got plenty of Gold Cup, plenty of Copa America, plenty of Women's World Cup to talk about. Thanks, everybody, for being part of the show today. Prize Picks, go to Prize Picks, use the code SDH. You get 25% of your initial deposit matched. You get a free $25 two-pick play. Women's World Cup is up, so go check the board for today's action. If you want a pick on the first games, you got about 30 minutes to get it in. You can also pair it up with a pick in baseball, a pick in golf, a pick in MMA, a pick in esports. Whatever's on the board, you can mix and match. Go to Prize Picks. You can download their apps as well. They have an app on Android. They have an app on iOS. Go check them out. Cool local company that supports the show. We appreciate it. And it's a fun daily fantasy, and it's easy. And I've had some good success on the Women's World Cup. Hopefully I will have that today.
I will leave that to you.
I'm fingers crossed. We will be back tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot.